7 stages will take the riders straight down to the south through the center part of the country. Last year, plagued by snow, so this year's edition avoiding some of the climbs early on. Down in the south, Rasteau, Digne-les-Bains, Avignon, these towns have a lot more climbs, and this will be where the GC battle is fought. And the last stage around Nice is also very tough.
Well, the race is made up of 1 prologue, 2 flat stages to begin with, 3 average hilly stages, 2 mountain stages, 1,275 kilometers, making a total of 792 miles. 21 teams, 229 riders taking part in this year's Paris-Nice, which is nicknamed the Race to the Sun. Well, I have to say, if we're looking for a favourite, the #1 favourite has to be the defending champion, the man who last year was the first American to win this event, Bobby Julich. He started off with a very good prologue right at the very start of the season, but what got his jersey actually on the road up to the Montferrand. After that, it was all really a question of defence. And he looks very solid already at the start of the season, having done well in the Tour of California.
A couple of other challengers, Discovery Team's Jaroslav Popovic, looking to be the successor for Lance Armstrong. This is images from last year's Tour de France, where he won the best young jersey of that competition. Look for Popo to do a good start to the season in Paris-Nice. Also, Floyd Landis, hot on the heels of winning the Tour of California. Big Floyd from California himself, looking to defend the Phonak colors here in Paris-Nice. He's a great time trialist and a solid climber. Big Floyd has already started his season off well and would like to do a good Paris-Nice to keep it rolling. Chris Horner, the Sonia Duval rider from last year, now he rides for the team of Robbie McEwen, and that would be Davide Monlotto. Won a stage of the Tour of Switzerland last year. He's a solid performer domestically here in the States, but he wants to do a good Paris-Nice to get his European campaign started off right.
Well, look at the list of Americans participating in this year's Paris-Nice. Obviously, Bobby Julich, Christian van der Velde on the same team. Dave Zabriskie, the winner last year of the opening day at the Tour de France. Floyd Landis, as Bob said, in excellent form so far this year. Chris Horner, and of course, riding for Discovery Channel, Jason McCartney. But Bob, I have to say, it all starts really with that 4.8-kilometre time trial right around the heart of Issy-les-Moulineaux. It's a very interesting prologue profile.
It's 3 miles long, right on the outskirts of Paris. Easy transfer for the riders flying in, but the prologue itself will not be easy at all. Here's the map out on the city streets. A couple of tricky corners right at the start. There's a bit of a climb also right there through the park. And no easy day for the riders today to start off 4.8 kilometers just outside of the Palace of Sports. Here's the profile. Little climb in the middle. Right there you can see it. And 4.8 Ks, not a lot of time separation probably, but it's a good indication of who's in form right off the bat.
Well, let's have a look at the stage facts. 4.8 kilometres is 3 miles, and that's the distance, by the way, between the Empire State Building and the Brooklyn Bridge. The highest point of the race, only one climb, goes up to 82 metres. Last year's winner was Jens Voigt. And the interesting fact is that it's the first time ever an American will defend Paris-Nice title, and that's Bobby Julich. Well, as we go down to the action in Paris-Nice, an incredible time has been posted very early on by Andrei Kashayk in a time of 6 minutes, 8 seconds, 0.56, and that is a time that's going to be very difficult to beat. Second fastest time at the moment is Sami Sanchez, 6 minutes, 10 seconds, 0.72, and the third best time is done by a Frenchman, Benoit Vaugrenard, a time of 6 minutes, 12 seconds. So a lot of action and a lot of big names still to come, but Andrei Kashayk has certainly opened up the mark. Well, down to live pictures here. This is Dmitry Fofanov. I have to say, Bob, it's a very brisk start to Paris-Nice because just 6 degrees Celsius, that's around about 50 degrees Fahrenheit. Bit of a chill in the air for the start of the season.
Bit cold, but that's to be expected. In this race starting on the outskirts of Paris in the far northern part of the country, going all the way down to the south. And that will make all the riders pleased. Last year it was brutally cold, and here we see Chris Horner in the start house.
Well, Chris Horner looking at 4.8 kilometres around this circuit. He's had a very good start to the season. I think he's fairly happy with this new team as well, because Horner moved across during the winter transfer season to the team of Davide Monlotto. That's the team of Robbie McEwen. He was actually going to stay on board with Sonia Duval, but they couldn't come up with a contract in time, Bob, and I have a feeling right now he's quite happy with this team because it's got a lot of English-speaking riders in it.
Robbie McEwen from Australia, of course. Fast Freddie Rodriguez, his teammate, also from the United States, and they are coming off a great campaign at the Tour of California. Chris himself second on a stage to Big George Hincapie. Very exciting finish there in Santa Rosa when the whole peloton came down the line. Freddie Rodriguez, his teammate, nearly taking the win, got a flat tire with just a few hundred meters to go when he was perfectly positioned for the win on the stage. But it was Chris Horner that did all of the work in the finale, leading him out. And it's great to see Chris here on the streets of Paris just a few days after the Tour of California. Probably has good form, but maybe a little bit of jet lag today.
Maybe a little bit of jet lag, but we're looking here at Fofanov. He's looking at a time to beat of a fellow Kazakhstan rider, Andrei Kashekin, who's led the best time so far at a time of 6 minutes and 8 seconds. Round that corner, it's a very long way to go. It's a good time for Fofanov. There's a lot of these riders from Kazakhstan performing well on so many different teams at the moment, but he's slipping away just over the last few kilometres. Bob, Crédit Agricole also having a very good start to the season, participating in the Tour Down Under in January, and then, of course, in the Tour of Qatar a little bit later on in the season. But there, a fairly lowly 38th place for this man. And I tell you what, this is a lowly 40th position for Fofanov. We'll take a quick break, but it's still early here at Paris-Nice, and there are a lot of big names still to come. Also coming up on today's Cyclism Sundays, the prologue of the Tour de France kicks off on July the 2nd, but the season starts now. We'll have a preview of the races the peloton competing leading up to the Tour, and with the season already underway, we've got highlights from the Tour of Qatar, where Tom Boonen made his mark. Plus, we'll have a closer look at the career of a cyclist who hasn't received much attention in this country, American Bobby Julich. That's all still to come on today's Cyclism Sundays. Welcome back to the opening prologue of the 64th edition of Paris-Nice. As tradition, the Race to the Sun here in Paris serves as the unofficial kickoff to the cycling season. For more on what's to come, here's Bob Roll with a preview of other races later in the season.
This July, the Pro Peloton will race in cycling's biggest event, the Tour de France. But before they get there, they must first face some of cycling's holy grails. Over the next 4 months, the cycling elite will square off for a chance to taste glory at the top races the calendar has to offer. The biggest one-day race in Italy, Milano-San Remo, still holds its place as the first of 5 monuments in cycling. Last year, Italian Alessandro Petacchi conquered the race that Italians hold close to their hearts in a thrilling, emotional finale. Crossing the line first again is high on his list of goals. But with his main rival, Belgian Tom Boonen, on the roster and all the best Italian racers in the world wanting to win on home soil, it won't be easy. A mini 2-day, 3-stage Tour de France comes next in the Ardennes region of France. A flat stage, a mountain stage, and a time trial was conquered by American Bobby Julich, who took top honors in 2005. With many of the Tour de France hopefuls in the race, including American Levi Leipheimer, a repeat for Bobby Julich will be his ambition. April showers are the indication that the classics are in full swing as the wet and muddy conditions provide for an epic day on the bike. For Belgium, the Tour of Flanders is the most important race of the season. Belgian-born Tom Boonen took the victory last year, but American George Hincapie is no stranger to this cobbled contest and could spoil the Belgians' chances. The Hell of the North comes next. Known for its chaotic cobbles, Paris-Roubaix is the epitome of the one-day classics. Discovery Team's George Hincapie has a love affair with this race and has been close on numerous occasions. Last year, he missed out by a bike length to the torpedo Tom Boonen. No doubt has replayed that finish over and over in his head and is ready to change the outcome. America's biggest race, the Tour of Georgia, saw young American Tom Danielson of Team Discovery finish on the top step of the podium in 2005. He's a strong candidate to be the next American in Paris, but for now he'll be grooming his talent and look to defend his title. The only Dutch classic, the Amstel Gold, was the springboard Italian Danilo Di Luca used when he conquered last year's Fog Fest in a breakout season, which he won the first ever UCI Pro Tour title. 3 days after the Amstel Gold, Di Luca took the Belgian race La Flèche Wallonne. He'll have competition from Italian Davide Rebellin, Spaniard Oscar Freire, and another Italian Paolo Bettini, who have their sights on the Pro Tour jersey as well. The oldest one-day race in cycling is Liège-Bastogne-Liège in Belgium. One of the favorites to win this year's Tour de France, Alexander Vinokourov, found success at last year's edition, which features an uphill sprint finish. We'll know if Vino is in good form come this race in late April. Then the second biggest race in the world, the Giro d'Italia, a full 21-day stage race around Italy, which awards a pink jersey to the winner, La Maglia Rossa. Last year, Team Discovery Channel guided Paolo Savodelli to victory. This year's field will have all the big names from the Tour de France, including Jan Ullrich, Yvon Basso and Floyd Landis. The two races before the Tour de France give all the contenders one last chance to test their form. The Dauphiné Libre in France and the Tour de Suisse overlap each other, with the Dauphiné covering 7 stages and the Tour de Suisse taking on 9. They will give us one last indication of who will challenge at the big show in France. The 2006 Tour de France will no doubt be the most exciting edition in years. With Lance Armstrong's retirement, the world will be waiting to see who will fill his shoes as the next champion in Paris. But in the meantime, an array of lead-up races will be just as competitive as the Tour contenders clash on a weekly basis for their chance to etch their name in cycling history.
We're looking here at Chris Horner here, trying to get himself to the summit of the Citadel, right in the very heart of Issy-les-Moulineaux. But this is a face we didn't really know at the start of the Tour de France last year. Dave Zabriskie already had a good time trial this year in the Tour of California, where he finished second to Floyd Landis. But Bob, maybe just a little bit too technical for Dave Zabriskie, this short, violent effort over 4.8 kilometers.
Just 3 miles for Dave Zabriskie, a couple of very tricky corners, a couple of S-bends before they get to the climb, and then it is a bit of a tricky descent down to the finish. Dave Zabriskie, one of the best time trialists in the world, has one of the most aerodynamic positions we've ever seen. He loves these solitary efforts. This one may be a little bit short for his talents. He won the 19-kilometer, not prologue, but first stage of last year's Tour de France, beating none other than Lance Armstrong, his countryman. CSC team rider, Dave Zabriskie, one of the best in the business. If you want to know about time trialing position, this is the man to watch.
Well, Johan Brunel has always said that this man has the most natural aerodynamic position of the whole of the professional peloton. And the aerodynamics, Bob, it comes from the body a lot more than the machine. And the position that Dave Zabriskie can get into really is a magnificent position. Technical part of the course early on. Look at this, the way he's gone around these corners. Sorry about the little bit of picture breakup, but these are live pictures coming from Paris. And this man, Bob, up to full speed immediately.
Absolutely up to full speed. I think he has trouble with the corners because he goes so fast down the straightaways sometimes. It's easy to overcook them. These bikes, not as easy to handle as the regular road machines. They're all about speed and aerodynamics, not great handling. But Dave Zabriskie doing a good prologue so far. You can see how fast he's going down the road. It never ceases to amaze me. That high cadence and that aerodynamic low position that he uses, absolutely ideal for time trial.
As the riders continue to start here, beginning on March 18th on OLN, see the last great race on Earth. 1 musher, 12 sled dogs across 1,200 miles of frozen rivers, deadly cliffs, and the most dangerous Alaskan tundra. The Iditarod on OLN, presented by Cabela's, Saturday, March 18th through April 4th. Well, this is almost exactly the same prologue circuit as last year. Look at Zabriskie coming around these corners. The riders will have had a look at these courses over the last couple of days, and that's the way, Bob, he was able to go into that corner without even touching the brakes. He's probably cruising on the flatter part of this course at around about 35 miles an hour, but this is the difficult part. It's on this first couple of kilometres when you go to the summit of the climb by the Citadel near Issy-les-Moulineaux, that's where the big difference is made.
This is the climb, and Dave Zabriskie's on there now.
He's right on the climb, but there's still a lot of big names to come up here in Paris. Welcome back to Paris-Nice, known as the Race to the Sun. The leader at the moment is still Andrei Kashaykin with a time of 6 minutes and 8 seconds. But, you know, it's not really the first race of the season. There's been a lot of good bike races going on. And one of the big names in the early part of this year has been Tom Boonen. He'll be starting amongst the favourites, but he started his season in Qatar. And in fact, to be precise, the Doha International, Doha being the capital of this small Arab country of Qatar. Jean-Marie Leblanc was on hand. He's the former organiser of the Tour de France, and he's been a big assistant to the promotion of the cycling down here. Eric Zabel riding for a new team, Team Milram, and a new colour for him. He's been in pink for the last couple of seasons, but I think all of the excitement was about the presence of the brand new world champion, Tom Boonen, who hasn't actually raced since he won that title last September.
In the rainbow jerseys as current world champion, what a season Tom Boonen had last year, winning Tour of Flanders and Paris-Roubaix in the same week, and then going on months later to win the World Championships. And this is the sprint. Boonen coming to the line there. Robbie Hunter trying to find his wheel, but look at the daylight.
Well, I tell you what, this is the absolute power of man by the name of Tom Boonen. Nobody can actually stay in his slipstream. And that kind of win over Robert Hunter and Eric Zabel on the first day of the Doha International, I have to say, Bob, goes to show that this man is going to be like Alessandro Petacchi later in the year. Then the riders all moved a little bit further away from the capital city to start the first stage in the Khalifa Stadium on a 131-kilometre stage all the way down to Alcor the Corniche. 135 riders, and obviously Tom Boonen was the man looking to get the win. It was dominated by a breakaway in the first 20 kilometres of 20 riders. In the breakaway, Bob, there was, of course, Tom Boonen, but also Erik Zabel.
Erik Zabel in that break, Tom Boonen. There's Boonen coming to the front, doing some work himself. Big crosswinds. No mountains in the Tour of Qatar, but there are always a lot of crosswinds.
Well, again, you know, Team Quickstep getting it set up for the man we're going to call this year, I think, the human torpedo. And look at Erik Zabel there, battling to stay in the slipstream once again of Tom Boonen. He makes these wins, Bob, look so easy as he leads Zabel and Hunter to the line.
Crushing victory there. Clear daylight, stopped pedaling a few meters before the line, and he gets the overall lead. Stage number 1, Tour of Qatar.
Well, he gets himself the overall lead, but the next day was rather interesting for the riders because we started at the camel racetrack right outside of Doha. And this is a sport which is practiced here, and I tell you what, don't get too close to the camels because they can give you a nasty kick. 133 riders left for this 138-kilometre stage, and everybody, I think, Bob, waiting to see whether or not they could knock Tom Boonen off the top of the blocks.
Bike racing and camel racing, not for the faint-hearted, and this is why. Look at this pile-up on the fast roads there. That's Stuba from Chocolat Jacques and Tiziano del Antonia from Panaria going down very hard here. Stage number 2, Tour of Qatar. That's a horrible way to start your season. No shortage of crashes throughout this bike race. Riders taking the shortest cut there and knocking this rider down. Benoit Siner from France going down hard as well.
Well, doing a bit of a Lance Armstrong there as well as he cuts across the median in the middle of the road. It doesn't seem as if anyone was too hurt, but setting up the sprint once again. Team Quickstep reckon they've got the fastest man on the block. Just getting in there in the orange jersey, though, was Padre Gria of Ceramica Panaria, and still up there in the white jersey as leader or second in the points classification, again, Erik Zabel. This man, Tom Boonen, was unbeatable at this point of the game, putting up, I would have to say, the curse, what we call, of the rainbow jersey well behind him. He was still the overall leader as the riders moved away on the third stage from Sea Line Beach Resort back to the Khalifa Stadium. A long stage, 160 kilometres. And Bob, look at that sprint once again. This man looks as if nobody is going to get round him this year.
Absolutely nobody capable of getting around him. Zabel coming pretty close there. But Tom Boonen once again getting the better of Zabel as well as Madi Breschel. Good little sprint there by the rider from CSC, but no one can stop Boonen so far.
Well, at the start of stage 4, the riders moved away from Al Zubarah all the way to the Qatar Olympic Committee headquarters, 144 kilometres of racing. There was a small breakaway which dominated the early part of the race, but as we charged into town, it was once again all back together. Tom Boonen this time led it out from an awful long way, and it looked as if he was going to make it 4 for 4. But that wasn't counting on the charge to the line by the Austrian rider Bernard Eisel.
Bernard Eisel finally puts Tom Boonen off of the top spot. That's his first loss since winning the Worlds last October. Unbelievable result. Still leading the overall, though.
Well, moving into the 5th stage, it was all going to be decided for a fraction of seconds because it was all the bunch sprints. The riders moving from Al Takira to Doha the Corniche, 151 kilometres of racing. Tom Boonen right in the middle there, and on his far shoulder, Erik Zabel, the old man of the sport, but still very keen. Coming down the middle, charging to the line just like Alessandro Petacchi did last year, Tom Boonen makes it win number 4 out of 5. What an incredible start to the season. And Erik Zabel, ever present there in 2nd place, and Fabrizio Guidi changing the names in the top 3 for him, his best place of the season so far. But the overall winner of the 2006 Tour of Qatar firmly on the shoulders of Tom Boonen. 11 seconds ahead of Erik Zabel. Aurélien Clerc of Phonak Team Hearing Systems, he was 3rd in 30 seconds arrears. Robbie Hunter with some fine sprinting was up there in 4th, and Fabrizio Guidi of Phonak Hearing Systems also up there in 5th place, 40 seconds in arrears. And Tom Boonen will be coming up very shortly when he gets into the starting ramp of this year's Paris-Nice. Well, Zabriskie, I have to say, Bob, has come out very fast indeed. He's looking excellent here, and we may well be looking at a new best time when he gets to the finish, as we see climbing into the starting gate. A lot of big names still to come here. This is Sandy Cassard from La Française des Jeux. But down towards the end, Bob, we've got all of the big names starting. Last man to start will be Bobby Julich. Just before him will be Floyd Landis. About 10 minutes before them, the Olympic gold medalist in the individual pursuit, Bradley Wiggins. And of course, the former Olympic bronze medalist, Bradley McGee, and Dave Zabriskie already out on course. And to me, Bob, he seemed to be going exceptionally fast.
Dave Zabriskie looked to be hauling up that climb, using the big chain ring and sprinting up it. We could hear the disc wheel humming, and Chris Horner coming to the finish line with a decent time. Not going to challenge for the win, but a decent time by Chris Horner.
Oh, look at the gear that he's using now. He's out of the saddle, using all of his energy to try and stop that clock. You know, Bob, it's a long way from that final corner. 42nd place there for Chris Horner, 6:26, and still the man to beat Andrei Kashakin with a time of 6:08.56. Look at the power, though, Bob. I think this man is going to have a good season.
Chris Horner looking forward to a full season in Europe, and maybe another shot to do the Tour de France. Made his debut last year as a 33-year-old. You don't oftentimes see that in professional cycling. But hats off to Chris Horner. A good little ride in the prologue here to start his European campaign.
Well, this is Sandy Cassaro, Française de Jeu. He may well be trying to set a few times for his team leader, Bradley McGee, who starts off a little later on. He rode a good year last season. He had himself the overall victory at the Route du Sud. That was just before the start of the Tour de France. But all of these riders, Bob, they must know this course, because you see the way they go through that chicane. Nobody is touching the brakes. They don't want to lose any impetus at all before this climbing part up to the summit of the Citadel.
Momentum is key for this prologue course. You want to carry as much speed as possible through every corner and get to this pretty tough climb with some fresh legs, and maybe we'll see the rider using the good tactics with the good form come out the prologue winner. You need a little bit of both on this course.
Well, as we go back here to Dave Zabriskie, the man we were just looking at, Sandy Cassar, was a man born in Paris, but you know what? Dave Zabriskie is looking very confident.
After every star hangs them up, someone must fill his shoes. The greatest riders in the world are about to collide. One by one, the contenders will emerge. From the cobblestones of France to the mountains of Italy. Who will be the next king of cycling? Cyclism Sundays, the clash of the contenders. Paris-Nice continues next Sunday at 5. Brought to you by John Hancock.
Welcome back to Cyclism Sundays on OLN. We're in France for the opening prologue of Paris-Nice. As the cycling world begins life after Lance Armstrong, we need to bear in mind there's still plenty of Americans racing on the circuit. Throughout the season, we'll try and keep tabs on all the top Americans as they prepare to compete in this year's Tour de France. Tommy Danielson started the year off well with 8th place overall in the Tour of California, and Levi Leipheimer, I think, has got the best form of his career, winning the opening prologue and going to finish 6th overall at the end.
Floyd Landis was the winner of the Tour of California after a fantastic time trial performance and great teamwork by his squad, Phonak.
Freddie Rodriguez was up there with a 2nd place on the 4th stage, but I have to say Bobby Julich, 2nd in the prologue and 3rd overall, indication that the CSC rider is in great form already.
Also riding really well in the Tour of California, we got a chance to see Chris Horner. He's got a new squad this year, Davide Monlato, and he'll have a lot of English-speaking teammates. 2nd place on stage number 2 of the Tour of California, stage number 2 there, just behind Big George Hincapie.
Well, a man we were expecting big things of, the big time trialist Dave Zabriskie, finished 2nd overall in the Tour of California, already an indication that his time trialing form is there.
Big George Hincapie, as I mentioned, won 2 stages of the Tour of California and finished 4th overall. A little bit disappointment in the time trial for Big George, but a solid start to the season.
A lot of Americans to follow. We'll keep tabs on them throughout the season, and I'm sure they'll do even better than they started. Bob, this is Dave Zabriskie. I've got to tell you, he is going down this hill like a man possessed. He realizes that he's put a big effort in on the climb. It's a difficult prologue, this, because at 4.8 kilometers, you start on the flat, you're straight uphill and downhill to the finish, and you have to take risks. Now, this is Koos Moerenhout coming up to the finish line, and this is a very good time by the Dutchman. It's not going to be the best time. Sammy Sanchez is the man in 2nd place at the moment, but Moerenhout is going to stop the clock well inside the top 10 there. A very nice move by him. But I tell you what, the man we're waiting for, Dave Zabriskie, cannot be far away from the finish line. Zabriskie is the next man to finish.
Koos Moerenhout come to the finish line, waiting on Dave Zabriskie. Always kind of nervous moments at the finish line when we're waiting for Dave Zabriskie to finish. A little bit of a technical descent there. We'll see how Zabriskie does in the last couple hundred meters of the prologue.
Little Tommy Vauclair was his nickname a couple of years ago in the Tour de France. He held the yellow jersey for many, many days, and he struggled and lost it on individual stages, and he pulled himself back into the lead, and he earned himself, I suppose, the title of the new darling of France. Here he is riding for Bouygues Telecom, and he's away looking at his 4.8-kilometre start. Now, this is Zabriskie, the time to beat 6:08. Let's have a look at this. It's going to be very close, Bob, but you know what? I don't think he's going to do it. Dave Zabriskie has gone outside the time even of Sammy Sanchez. He must have slowed on the technical part of the course.
Dave Zabriskie coming to the line there. Good ride by the American, coming off of the Tour of California. Some good fitness. 14th so far on the stage. Decent effort. Maybe a few too many corners for Dave. Plus, it's quite a short prologue at 4.8 kilometers. So we'll see how he does the rest of Paris-Nice. But this is a very good start for the man from Utah.
Some good times being posted here at Paris-Nice, but let's not forget, arena football is now on OLN. Next, the Philadelphia Soul takes on the Las Vegas Gladiators in the 50-yard war. The AFL on OLN. It's more fun indoors. Live next at 6:30 p.m.
Here we see Sandy Cassar making his way through the streets of Issy-les-Moulineaux for the Prologue of Paris-Nice. A little bit cool temperatures. In the low 50s today, nothing like we saw last year when it was brutally cold, down in the 20s Fahrenheit, under the freezing, and we saw a couple of riders really struggle with the cold in last year's Paris-Nice. Snow plaguing the event last year. It was a race to the sun. It finally cleared up as the riders got towards the Mediterranean, and this year has been cold in Europe so far, but today seems to be a pretty decent day for the Prologue.
Well, Bob, you remember one very famous man had a difficult time with the Prologue last year. His name was Lance Armstrong. He put in probably, I would have to say, his worst ever time trial performance. He finished about 144th, but he did go on to win the Tour de France on the 7th occasion in July, a little bit later in the year when the weather was nicer. And Sandy Cassar here now on the more difficult, technical, speedy downhill descent. Okay, well, this is Jaroslav Popovic in the starting gate. He knows the times to beat are Andrei Kashekin 6:08, Sammy Sanchez 6:10, and Rick Verbrugge 6 minutes and 12 seconds. But as Popovic comes down of the starting ramp here, Bob, the weather is now, I think, going to play an active role in this afternoon's result.
A little bit of rain starting to fall on the bike racers right now, and that'll make the streets very slick, especially the first few raindrops. It's been a while. It's been dry in Paris for a while, so very slippery conditions. You can see Popovic's machine bouncing there around a little bit on the paint stripes. Popovic accelerating hard. He wants to do a very good Paris-Nice Prologue, and he's out on course. Jaroslav Popovic from the Ukraine. Big things are hoped for from this man by the Discovery Channel team as he tries to fill the very large shoes of Lance Armstrong. As the race gets further down towards the south of France, he'll be looking to these stages to carry him through to the Tour de France in July.
I tell you what, Bob, this man is trying to put in a fine performance here. He's regarded by Discovery Channel as the heir to the throne of Lance Armstrong. And if you look at the man's performances, you know, he's only just 25 years of age. He was 12th in his first Giro, then he was 3rd, then he was 5th. But last year, he was the best young rider in the Tour de France, as well as shouldering Lance Armstrong to his 7th victory. He is definitely a man for the future. Just retain that name, Popovic. That's the man we're looking at here. It's a pity that the rain has come down a fraction, because this will slow. Ooh, and he really taking risks, Bob. This man's going for it.
Absolutely going for it. Almost went right into that traffic island there. Jaroslav Popovic on the slope of the climb up to the Citadel in the heart of town here on the outskirts of Paris in the little village of Issy-les-Moulineaux. Popovic doing a good ride so far, keeping up a good tempo. Here's a replay of that, barely missing. Put a pad there up, and the riders will aim straight for that. But what they don't want to do is slow down before this climb. Want to keep as much momentum through those corners as possible to get up this climb as quickly as they can do. The rain falling now, a little bit of a traction issue for some of the riders as we get towards the big hitters coming later in the prologue. Everybody queued up, trying to take Kashekin out of the leaders board, but he is leading the race so far, and the rain will make it tough to pass our early guys that went on dry roads.
Yeah, that man Kashekin's going to be a difficult time to beat in 6:08.56, but this man could make the difference on the climb here. He looks very powerful indeed. I think he's looking for a good start to the season. You see he's opted for the full disc wheel at the back, but that does, Bob, in conditions like this, just make the rear end of the bike a fraction slippy.
Absolutely slippery for the riders. There is a technical descent before the finish line. We'll have to see how the rain affects the riders going through the last few corners. And when the prologue times are so close, just a few seconds separating the top 10 riders, then it's very tough to face these conditions and expect to be able to challenge the riders who went on much more ideal conditions with dry roads. But Popovich fighting on the climb still, going hard, coming towards the top of this climb. Now we'll follow him. Hopefully we'll get a chance to see how he rides on the descent. It'll give us a chance to look at the riders coming. If the rain can hold off for a few more minutes, 3 kilometers to go to the finish, well, we'll have a fair prologue. But so far, I think it's making the streets pretty slick for the riders to come towards the end of the field.
Well, Popovich is accelerating all the way to the summit of that climb as we go down to the finish line. And David Moncucci, not a bad time for David Moncucci, but with Jaroslav Popovich out on course, I tell you what, he's taking all kinds of risks to win this event. We'll take a short break and come back with the finish of Jaroslav Popovich. Jaroslav Popovich now has got himself over the top of that climb, and he's now on the very tricky, precarious descent. And Bob, he doesn't seem to be worried at all about the road conditions. Must have the tire pressure spot on.
Absolutely spot on, let's hope. He's going through a last couple of corners there. He's taking a lot of risks. A little bit drier this side of the hill, it seems like. And he's down in the drops there on the aero bars. 1 kilometer to go for Jaroslav Popovich. And we'll see if this rain is going to affect the riders as we get towards the big names to come still in the prologue of Paris-Nice.
Oh, Bob, a little bit of a slip there. We're sorry about the little bit of picture breakup, but these are live pictures coming from Paris-Nice, the first big race of the year in the Pro Tour. We're looking down here on Nico Matin, who himself was a winner of the prologue on this very same course back in 2003, although on that occasion it was the other way around. They decided the climb was not quite that hard, so they decided to use this one here this afternoon. But Jaroslav Popovich has been putting in some very fine times. Let's not forget the time to beat Andrei Kashekin of Kazakhstan and Liberty Seguros, 6:08.56. And here is Jaroslav Popovich. It's a good performance, but I think not quite good enough to match that performance of Kashekin. It's a long way, Bob, from that finishing line to from that corner, I should say, to the finishing line.
It is quite a ways there, and he's already gone outside the time of Kashekin. So Popovich, a good time, and maybe the rain is starting to affect the safety of the riders, taking a few less speed through each corner, and that adds up to the end. So Popovich now falling away. He's going to finish, well, he's in 57th now, so not a great effort by Jaroslav Popovich. Seemed to be going as fast as he could go, and maybe the rain now will slow down our favorite.
Well, today's only 4.8 kilometers, but let's not forget next Sunday OLN's back to Paris-Nice to cross the finish line on the first big stage race of this year's cycling season. Who will win the first race of the UCI Pro Tour? It's Cyclism Sundays on OLN next Sunday at 5 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Pacific. Now this is Jens Voigt. Now this is a beast of a man. He was aggressive in the Tour of California, and Bob, despite the weather conditions, he's going to be aggressive here on his own.
He had won this prologue last year to start Paris-Nice, a great result for the CSC team. They're still looking for some wins. CSC hasn't gotten a lot so far, and they were blanked out of the Tour of California, even though they brought some of their most powerful riders, including this man, Jens Voigt, and Bobby Julich, and Dave Zabriskie. We'll see if the jet lag may be affecting them a little bit. Dave Zabriskie not doing a fantastic prologue like we thought he would do. He came across the line 14th place, and as we get closer to the top of the leaderboard, we'll see if Dave Zabriskie, his placing will probably fall away a little bit further. This man won the prologue last year, Jens Voigt, and I'm sure he's trying to set a fast time today.
Well, I'm sure he will. I'm not sure that you can say they were blanked out of the Tour of California with second and third place in the overall classification, but they did on a number of occasions put Floyd Landis into difficulty, and very often because of the aggression of this man here. 4 kilometers to go for Jens Voigt. Had a brilliant season last year, capped it all off with a team time trial victory in the Luke Challenge, and there he was teamed up with Bobby Julich, and that was right towards the end of August. But he's a man, Bob, who is the man of the start of the season. He was very good in the Étoile de Bessèges last year, won himself the Tour of the Mediterranean, finished second to Bobby Julich in the Criterium International. It's a man, really, I suppose we must say, he's a man for all seasons.
Yes, he's a man for all seasons. He's one of the last pros to concentrate on big results throughout the year. And Jens Voigt, one of the toughest guys in all of bicycle racing. Never gives up, never surrenders. Christophe Moreau in the starting house. On a new team this year, he's come over to AG2R from the Crédit Agricole squad. He was 11th in the Tour last year. One of the most aggressive French riders in the whole peloton. Jens Voigt second in Liège, Bastogne-Liège, also last year behind none other than Alexander Vinokourov. Moreau off on his start now. He has been a good prologue performer in the past, even winning the prologue of the Tour de France back in 2001. So Christophe Moreau looking for a new start on a new team to this season.
Well, yeah, very interesting to see that he split up with a team he'd been with for a number of seasons, Crédit Agricole, at the end of last year. And he actually is one of those riders who's out to prove a point this season. So Christophe Moreau, he too now is out on course. Welcome back to the prologue as we're unfolding here right in the heart of Issy-les-Moulineaux. Bobby Julich is still to start, and Bob Roll is going to tell us a little bit more about the first American ever to win this race.
Perhaps one of the most overlooked American cyclists, 34-year-old Bobby Julich was once coined the next Le Monde after his breakthrough third-place podium finish at the 1998 Tour de France. His luck took a turn for the worse in the 99 edition when he crashed in a time trial and was forced to abandon. He switched teams from Cofidis to Crédit Agricole and finally T-Mobile, where he rode in support of Jan Ullrich. But after lackluster results, he found himself on the verge of retirement. Then at the end of the 2003 season, he caught his big break. Bjarne Riis, the team director of the Danish outfit CSC, gave Julich the role of domestique for the Tour de France, but also the freedom to pursue his own chances during the rest of the year. Julich wasted no time capitalizing on the opportunity and took an impressive time trial win at the 2004 Tour of the Basque Country, his first win since 1998.
I knew the moment I signed with Bjarne Riis, after the first conversation we had, I knew that I made the right decision not to retire and not to end on a sour note. And this victory means so much to me. This feels good.
He then took a bronze medal in the individual time trial at the 2004 Summer Olympics. Julich's renaissance continued last year when he turned in his best season to date, starting with his historic ride at Paris-Nice, where he became the first American to ever win the race. He took that momentum into the Criterium International.
Julich knows how to rise to the occasions. He doesn't feel the pressure, and he's going to get himself the win. He's on fire, and he has been since Paris-Nice.
He had a successful showing in the 2005 Tour de France, helping teammate Ivan Basso ride to a second-place finish and taking a strong 17th overall himself. His form appears to be primed for this year's Paris-Nice, as he is fresh off a solid performance in the inaugural Tour of California, where he placed third overall. Bobby J rides with a newfound confidence, and the American will look to keep the spotlight here at Paris-Nice and throughout his spring campaign.
Thanks for that, Bob, and let's not forget Bobby Julich will be the last man to start here as defending champion. So now, as we're looking here at Jens Voigt, the time he has to beat is the time of Andrei Kashaykin, who was 2 seconds faster than Sammy Sanchez and 4 seconds faster than Rick Verbrugge. But the man of the early part of any season over the last few years, 34-year-old former East German Jens Voigt, looking powerful, Bob, but everyone, I think, suffering from the fact there is a slight change in the weather conditions. We started off in very dry, fast conditions, but now there's just a slight covering of dampness on the circuit.
That makes these turns very slippery, and if it rains a little bit more intensely, it has a tendency to get the oil off of the road. But the initial raindrops on any streets nowadays, you really feel them on your bicycle tires. They're very narrow. You want to have the maximum air pressure possible, and Jens Voigt, suffering himself, one of the handiest descenders and acrobats of cycling, Jens Voigt, he's having some hard times too.
Well, let's not forget he was the winner of the prologue last year, as we know. Now back down to the starting gates, and this is a jersey we haven't seen yet so far this season, Miram, and that is the jersey on Mirko Celestino. This is a brand new German-sponsored Italian co-team, and of course it's the home of a certain Alessandro Petacchi, and of course, strangely enough for us, Eric Zabel as well.
Eric Zabel, Petacchi, two of the fastest men in the world on the same team together. Here comes Axel Merckx to the finish line. Solid time by Merckx, but falling away from our leader, Kashaykin.
Well, this may well be the last time we see Axel Merckx here in Paris-Nice, because he has threatened to retire at the end of this season. And of course, he's swapped across to a new team as well, Team Phonak for him, looking for a new home after not being very happy last year, Bob, with the performance of his team when they actually chased him down on a number of occasions during Paris-Nice, touring Tour de France.
Yes, Axel Merckx not pleased with the way his season unfolded last year. He thought he should have more chances in the breakaways. He did win a good stage in the Tour of Switzerland as well as the Dauphiné, so Axel Merckx still decent form. Didier Roux, former time trial champion of France in the starting house. He's a teammate of Thomas Voigtler on the Bugay team. Axel Merckx, the son of the great Eddie Merckx, probably the greatest cyclist of all time.
Well, Didier Roux in the past has been the national champion of France. He's also, as Bob said, a very good individual time trialist. But this is the arrival now of Jens Voigt, last year's winner of the Prologue. He's not going to win it this time, but we have noticed a lot of CSC riders banging it right up there in the top 10. But for Voigt, this really is a bit of a surprise to me, because it's only good enough for 41st place, 6 minutes 25 seconds, Bob. It has to be the road conditions.
The rain coming down, maybe even a little bit of jet lag coming back all the way from California just 1 week ago.
Well, I tell you what, it's an awful long way to go to Nice, but don't forget, although this man is not putting in a great performance here at the opening prologue, I'm sure he's going to be a lot more aggressive throughout the week. Well, fresh off a win at the Tour of California, team leader of Phonak American Floyd Landis will be a favourite at this year's Tour de France, but he should be ready to perform here at Paris-Nice. He'll be waiting to start just 1 minute before Bobby Julich.
After every star hangs them up, someone must fill his shoes. The greatest riders in the world are about to collide. One by one, the contenders will emerge. From the cobblestones of France to the mountains of Italy. Who will be the next king of cycling? Cyclism Sundays, the clash of the contenders. Paris-Nice continues next Sunday at 5. Brought to you by John Hancock.
Well, this could be a good performance too. Dario Cioni has been a former time trial champion of Italy, looking very concentrated, Bob. He's a man who shouldn't really worry too much about the road conditions changing, because he's a former mountain biker.
He should be pretty good at handling the bicycle after a career as a mountain bike racer. Oddly enough, starting in his leg warmer, so maybe not taking the prologue as seriously as he should.
Well, back to the finishing line here again. We've got the arrival of Christophe Moreau. Not a bad time for him at the start of the season. He's a man expecting to ride in good shape towards the month of July. And as Moreau comes up to the line, I tell you what, Bob, they're all fading over the last 100 metres or so. 52nd place for Christophe Moreau, 6 minutes and 26 seconds. Let's have a look at that again. He's looking powerful, Bob. I have a feeling we're going to see a very aggressive Paris-Nice here this year, because all of these riders certainly want to do well. Brad McGee, let's not forget, this is a man, and look at the time, this is a man who a couple of years ago was the Olympic Games champion in 2004. It was in the team pursuit on that occasion. This is an individual ride here. He's looking at the time of Kashakin to beat 6:08. It's a long way from that corner now, but McGee can see the clock above the finishing line, and he's kicking, he's concentrating. I think he's going to do it this time. This is going to be a new best time for Bradley McGee. The clock, where is it going to stop? Will he make it? He stopped it just outside, Bob, by half a second. Bradley McGee goes into second place.
One of the prologue specialists in the sport of cycling, Bradley McGee from Australia, desperately wanting a win here. He's had some troubles in the off-season trying to qualify the Commonwealth Games. His team not letting him do that, but he tried to do a great prologue, which he's capable of. He's won the prologue in the Tour de France and Giro d'Italia. I think it's the rain and slowing him down a little bit in the corners that prevented him from winning this prologue.
As we wait for the big stars in cycling to come out, don't forget, we believe in hockey. We believe in all grit and no quit. Tomorrow, Philadelphia Gunners Garnier and Forsberg lead the Flyers up against the Montreal Canadiens. And on Tuesday, the Blues try to stop an avalanche. The NHL on OLN this week. As we look here, this is a name and a man and a face that we're going to see an awful lot of this year. His name is Tom Boonen. He's not wearing the World Champions jersey here this afternoon because this is the time trial discipline of the sport. But Bob, this man has had a great start to the season.
Since the World Championships, he's done a few races. He's won just about all of them. And he's been having a great start to the season, especially down in Qatar, where I think he won 4 out of the 5 stages down there. He's a fast man, aggressive. He's not a man for the time trials, a little bit too broad of the shoulder perhaps, but he definitely is one of the fastest men in all of cycling, and he started this season fabulously. The curse of the rainbow jersey hasn't affected Tom Boonen so far.
It certainly hasn't done that at all. But you know, Bob, I think he has to do a very fast prologue here, because with the time bonuses later in the week, this man could get himself the leader's jersey for a couple of days, because this is not a majorly hilly Paris-Nice, although maybe just a little bit too tough for Tom Boonen down towards the end in Nice.
He's trying to win some stages here and carry the good momentum. Quick Step dominating the season so far. I think they've won about 10, 15 races already this season.
Well, you're looking here at a man who has been a world champion, an Olympic champion, Bradley Wiggins, an individual champion at the Olympic Games, and now they're telling me, the British team, that this man has got the form this year to win the prologue of Paris-Nice. And look at the way Bob, with that face, is a face of determination.
Absolute determination and concentration. Bradley Wiggins, one of the best time trialists on the track in the last few years, trying to translate some of that onto the road now. Completely different discipline, but Bradley McGee, look at that start. He's already up to speed, down on the aero bars and making good time in the prologue. Bradley Wiggins out on course.
Changing teams again during the winter transfer season, now to Team Cofidis. You know, a couple of years ago he was World Pursuit Champion, but his performance at the Olympic Games was unbelievable. He won the individual pursuit. He got a silver medal in the team pursuit, and he got a third place bronze medal in the Madison with a guy by the name of Rob Hales. The difference, Bob, in the style there is easy to see. Punchy Tom Boonen on the left-hand side, smooth and perfect on his machine on the right-hand side is Bradley Wiggins.
Bradley Wiggins, another in a long line of British time trialing specialists. I think we can go way back to the early parts of British cycling, and time trials were the only type of race that was allowed on British roads for a long time, and Bradley Wiggins, not the latest in a long line of great time trialists from England.
Well, look at this. Not a bad performance by Didier Roos, former national champion of France, former winner of many time trials, gets himself just inside the top 10 there. Not a bad ride. He's lost himself 8 seconds, 6 minutes and 17 seconds for him, but I have a feeling the best times are still to come. Let's not forget, we've got Boonen out on course, we've got Bradley Wiggins on course. A good name, Bob, as a possible surprise to all of the winners here. Vladimir Gusev, watch out for him. He's the national champion of Russia at the individual time trial, and we saw him not too long ago in the Tour of California performing very well. Looking down here, this will be Kim Kirchen, another man who's changed teams throughout this winter. He now rides for T-Mobile. He was a member of the Fassa Bortolo squad for many, many seasons. And I think coming across here to T-Mobile, I think we'll see him do some good performances in the early start of the season. But obviously later on, when we get to the month of July, it's all for one, isn't it, this year? It's all for Jan Ullrich to try and win, now that there's an absence of Lance Armstrong.
Jan Ullrich coming to the Tour de France with the best chance to win since Lance Armstrong took 7 titles in a row. And T-Mobile, all of his teammates are fired up already to help Jan Ullrich do just that, to try to win the Tour for the second time. Let's not forget that Ullrich won the Tour way, way back in 1997.
Seems like that was forever. This, though, is Bradley Wiggins, one of the stars of the future, still a very young man at just 25 years of age. He's got a very good chance of being the top time trialist on the circuit this year, and I think he'll find himself an awful lot happier now that he's on this new Team Cofidis, for him anyway, as he's out on the difficult part of the course. He's facing up to 3 kilometres to the finish. We're still waiting for the big hitters to come out, but when we come back, he was on the podium already this season at the Tour of California. American Bobby Julich takes the start of the prologue as he looks to defend the title he won here last year. That's up next. Well, this is Tom Boonen getting himself into as an aerodynamic position as he is capable of, Bob, but with a big body like that, it's pretty hard.
Doesn't slice through the air like the greyhounds of the sport, like Dave Zabriskie, but he does have incredible speed and an unbelievable amount of power, producing upwards of 1,500 watts in the sprint and cranking it up close to 40 miles an hour in those very fast sprints. I think in the Tour of Qatar, he said he looked down at his cyclocomputer one time and it read 74 kilometers an hour with about 2Ks to go, and that is absolutely flying. Big Tom Boonen, one of the big stars of cycling and probably the biggest star in Belgium, on all of Belgian sports in the modern age right now today.
He certainly is. They're expecting a lot from young Tom Boonen later on in the season. He's going to defend his titles in the Tour of Flanders and, of course, in Paris-Roubaix, which we'll be covering here on OLN. And let's not forget, those are some dramatic one-day classics. This is Kim Kirchen we're looking at here. It's very strange, isn't it? The first race of the year, Bob, getting used to all the riders in their different jerseys, because we've been used to them in completely different colours for the last few years.
Having formerly raced for Fassa Bortolo, Kim Kirchen coming towards the finish line. pretty decent time. He won't rival Koshechkin. It was only Bradley McGee, the man getting anywhere near Koshechkin, and Bradley McGee, maybe starting a little bit earlier in the day, would have passed him because of a little bit of moisture that was out on the course while Bradley McGee was riding. It seems to have cleared up a bit now. Kirchen coming to the finish line, perhaps not even in the top 50. He's new to the T-Mobile squad after Fossil Bortolo fell apart at the end of last year.
Hard to recognize these guys in the new colors. 89th place for Kim Kirchen there, 6 minutes and 32 seconds. He won't be too happy with that for his new team. But the next man to come into the finishing line has got to be Big Tom Bonen, the dominator of the early part of this season, and a man who we reckon may not be going to win the individual prologue time trial here, but he won't be too far off. Here he is. Look at this. Big Tom getting out of the saddle. Let's see what the time is. The time to beat is 6:08 by Koshechkin. And Big Tom Bonen, I wonder if he can sprint this last 50 meters. I don't think he's going to get the win, but I tell you what, he's going to push everybody very, very close. The acceleration of the world champion comes up to the line. Bonen is trying to stop the clock. He won't do it this time, but Bob, that is the best prologue time trial that Tom Bonen has ever ridden in his life. Third for the moment, 6:10.
Well, if you're a field sprinter and you're going to try to beat Tom Bonen, you are afraid right now. This is a great indication that Bonen's form is on fire. Usually the big men of the sport don't do so well in the prologues, but Tom Bonen on exceptional form, carrying that from Qatar and now through the early season in Belgium and here on the streets outside of Paris. Great ride by the sprinter from the Quick Step squad. Big Tom Bonen, the current road racing world champion.
Well, I tell you what, Bob, I think there we could be looking at the man who will wear the leader's jersey tomorrow. But look at this, Bradley Wiggins, the Olympic time trialist champion, the Olympic, I should say, pursuit champion. Look at this, the acceleration now. Bradley McGee has gone out earlier on. This man comes from the same kind of stock, an individual pursuiter on the track. He's accelerating. He's seeing the clock on above the finishing line there. He knows the time to beat is 6:08. Bradley Wiggins is digging deep, but they're all having a very hard time getting anywhere near the time of Koshechkin. He has slipped away, 6:12. He too has almost lost 4 seconds to Koshechkin. Now, Bob, we're now looking really at the possibility of Andrei Koshechkin being the leader of Paris-Nice because we've not got very many men left to beat him. I'd have to say I can only think of 3. Vladimir Gusev, Floyd Landis, and of course the last man to start, Bobby Julich.
Well, Floyd Landis on very good form. He's not so good at the shorter, super technical and fast prologues, but we'll see if anybody can beat the time of Koshechkin. Bradley McGee coming the closest, just a half a second behind. It's going to be very tough. Alberto Contador from Liberty Seguros out on course, and the Paris-Nice prologue might go to Andrei Koshechkin, and he started a long time ago. He's had a long time to sit here and wait for a lot of riders to get close, but no one so far has been able to topple the time of Koshechkin.
Well, this is Gert Stekemans from De Vitamin Lotto, and in fact he's one of the last riders to start. I think they were actually rather clever, De Vitamin Lotto, because they spread the names of the riders out across the start sheet to try and calculate against some bad weather coming out. We've now, as Stekeman comes out, just got 3 riders left to start here in Paris-Nice. Joost Postuma from Team Rabobank, a young rider on the squad who we saw ride very well in the Tour de France last year. Floyd Landis will be after him 1 minute later, and then starting at just 12 minutes past the hour of 4 o'clock here in France, Bobby Julich will be the last man to start. Contador over the last couple of seasons, Bob, has actually turned out to be rather a good rider. This is the face of the young man who won a stage in the Tour de France last year, and he's got plenty of warm gloves on to keep himself nice and warm, concentrating on the clock just in front of him. He knows that it's important. I think Team Rabobank putting a lot of pressure on his shoulders here this afternoon. So now too, the Dutchman is out on course for 4.8 kilometres. Looking here at Alberto Contador, and strangely enough, he's riding for Liberty Seguros, and so too is Alexander Vinokourov this year, the man who on 2 occasions has been the winner of Paris-Nice. But this year, I think, Bob, riding for a Spanish team, they've decided to move him to a slightly more Spanish program, and he's currently riding in the Vuelta a Murcia.
Vinokourov, twice winner of Paris-Nice. This is Floyd Landis in the start house. Phonak rider coming off of a big win in the Tour of California. He did that by great teamwork from his teammates at Phonak, but also by a fantastic individual effort in the long time trial around the streets of San Jose. And big Floyd Landis, the leader of the Phonak squad. Great job by that team. Looking to do a good prologue here in Paris-Nice. We'll see how the rain and the jet lag affects him. 9 hours time difference from his home in California to the streets of Paris, France.
Well, here we go. Floyd Landis out on course, a slightly new position there. You see that aerodynamic position he's adopted. The team tried to dissuade him from using this position, saying that it couldn't be comfortable at all. So he took them to the air tunnel, the fluid tunnel, to see whether or not it was aerodynamic. And at the end of the day, he proved to them, Bob, that it was very fast. And he proved to us it was very fast in the Tour of California when he won the individual time trial there over 17 miles. Might be a little bit of a violent effort for him here, but at the start of the season, these guys are all motivated. This man is more motivated than anyone else because he was the first American ever to win Paris-Nice last year. Bobby Julich, last year's winner, defending champion now, looking at a little bit of justice here, whether or not he can win the opening prologue. Bobby Julich, he too now is away.
Bobby Julich out on course, taking a few deep breaths before this effort. Flat out sprint. You got to get up to speed as quickly as you can do, then get into that aerodynamic position. Every meter of this course counts when the times are so fast. It's hard to imagine that Bradley McGee could lose by less than 1 second. And that's the standing so far. In the lead, Kashechkin and Bradley McGee in second place. Bobby Julich, the last man out on course with a chance to beat that time of Kashechkin. And he's looking more and more solid as the race leader. And we might have a very surprising winner of the prologue if Floyd Landis or Bobby Julich can't pass him and do a faster time.
Well, that's Bobby Julich we're looking at down there, and he has got to beat the time of Andrei Kashechkin of Kazakhstan and of Liberty Seguros, a time of 6 minutes, 8 seconds, 0.56. And I tell you what, we're getting some strange times. In the middle of this afternoon's course, there was a little bit of rain came to dampen the surface, but I think that seems to have dried out now. Look on the left-hand side, though, Bob, at the power of Floyd Landis. This man is looking to having a good season. I think he suffered a little bit from the Lance Armstrong phobia during last season because he switched away from U.S. Postal Service to ride for Team Phonak. Now there is no more Lance Armstrong. I think a lot of these American riders are a little bit relieved because Armstrong overshadowed their careers a bit.
Well, look at the gear that Floyd Landis is turning on this climb. Gigantic gear out of the saddle, sprinting all the way up it. Now he's down into the drops as it levels off a little bit. Bobby Julich on the other side of the course, he is going as fast as he can trying to get through these corners.
Well, Bobby Julich using a much smaller gear there as he goes around the corner. He too is using all of the corners there possible to keep himself as fast as possible. Now this could be a new time here. This is Contador going around the corner. Kashechkin is the time to beat, 6:08, and this is Contador. You know, this man, I saw him come back to the top last year in the Tour Down Under, and now he's looking to try and get himself the first place at Paris-Nice. You know, he won the 5th stage of the Tour Down Under last year. Bob, it's so close. This man, Kashechkin, is very difficult to beat, and as we plunge for the line here again, another rider just failing to dethrone Kashechkin. 3rd place for Alexander Contador, 6:10, just inside of 2 seconds slower.
Alberto Contador, full-out sprint to the finish. He knows he's close. He's trying to just get every last bit of energy and speed out of the body, but not quite, just falling short. 3rd place, 3rd fastest time for Contador. Alexander Vinokurov, his teammate, not here in Paris-Nice this year, but that's a very good substitute in Contador. They're a great time. Just a couple of guys left that might have a chance, and both of them are on your screen right now. Floyd Landis in the green and Bobby Julich in the red, white, and black of Team CSE, the defending champion on the right-hand side of your screen. Bobby Julich out on his prologue now. On the climb, even in the drops on the climb. Floyd Landis now on the technical descent, trying to get to the finish line. But Kashechkin being very hard to beat. So far, hasn't been passed by anybody. And he started hours ago, and he's been sitting in the team car now for a long time, just hoping against hope that no one would pass him. We might have a very surprising leader of Paris-Nice.
Well, Stegerman's coming up. Not a bad performance by Stegerman's either, finishing 8th there, 6:14.89. 6.5 seconds lost for him, but the big story is there are still 3 riders out on course. The next man to finish will be Joost Postuma, but strangely enough, the big battle seems to be between Floyd Landis of the United States and Team Phonak and Bobby Julich of the United States and Team CSC. Bob, we'd have to go back an awful long time to see when 2 Americans have started last 2 in an individual time trial like this, and they've been the 2 featured riders of the afternoon.
Yes, absolutely. This is 2 Americans in France on a Swiss and a Danish team, respectively. Floyd Landis and Bobby Julich, leaders in their own right of big European teams. Here comes Jos Postuma to the finish line. He won a stage in Paris-Nice last year. He's a good up-and-coming Dutchman on the Rabobank squad. A lot is hoped for from Postuma. That's a solid time, but he will not pass Kashechkin. He'll be close to the top 10, but maybe just the top 20. Good ride by Postuma, but not enough to beat our leader Kashechkin.
Well, 17th place for him, 6:17, just 9 seconds adrift, but there are now just 2 riders left to finish. As we look at the performance of Postuma, it was the 6th stage of Paris-Nice that he won last year, all the way down into Cannes. That was just before the finishing ride around Nice, and he showed on that occasion that he had very good downhill abilities. So as you can see, just now we're waiting for 2 riders to come into the finishing line, and there's only 1 man out on course now. Look at this, Floyd Landis. I don't know whether he'll be able to do it. This is the final corner. He's not really going to do it. Look at the way he's gone round. Oh, and he slipped there. This is because there's a little bit of risk being taken by these riders. The time to beat is Andrei Kashechkin, 6:08. We're over the 6-minute mark now for Floyd Landis. What a massive gear this man is punching, but it's not going to be quite enough here this afternoon as Floyd Landis battles his way to the line. He is going to put in a fine performance. He's going to lay down the foundations for a possible win at Paris-Nice, but it's only good enough this afternoon for 11th place, 6 minutes and 15 seconds.
Good ride by Floyd Landis, carrying some momentum and fitness from the big win he had just a week ago in the Tour of California. Slipping around that last corner, so maybe the rain, still a little bit of moisture out on the course. Floyd Landis 11th so far, and Bobby Julich the last man out on course with a chance to pass Kashechkin.
Well, now we're waiting for Bobby Julich. Now, let's not forget, Bobby Julich didn't win the Prologue of Paris-Nice last year, but he went on to win the overall race. But this is a great performance, smoothly round the corner. The time to beat, 6:08. Bobby Julich is in fine form in the latter part of his career. You know, we thought Bobby Julich was going to retire a couple of seasons ago, but this could be the big surprise. Bobby Julich started last, but it's a long way. He's digging deep. Look at those pedals. He's ticking them over now. He knows the time to beat, and yes, he's done it. He has done it by a single second, 0.7 to be exact. Bobby Julich, last man to start, first man on the top of the podium here at Paris-Nice. Bob, this man in the latter part of his career is unbeatable.
Absolutely fabulous performance by Bobby Julich, the American, coming out of nowhere, the last man to start, the last man out on the race course, the only man with the chance to beat the leader Kashechkin, and he just barely got 0.71 seconds faster, and that could be anywhere on the course. I think that was a great ride by Bobby Julich, taking a lot of chances all over it, plus all the power and aerodynamics you can imagine. Great ride by Bobby Julich. What a surprise. We didn't think anybody would pass Kashechkin, but that was the only man that could do it.
Well, as we look down on the Eiffel Tower, it's a long time ago, isn't it, Bob, that we were last here, and that was for the final stage of Tour de France, I should say, and the last day in the career of Lance Armstrong. But at 33 years of age, it really is turning out to be a great performance by Bobby Julich. 6 minutes and 7 seconds, just a 1 second beating of Andrei Kashechkin, a 2 second beating of Bradley McGee. Contador putting in a fine performance there in 4th place, and watch out tomorrow for Tom Boonen, because he is a man who I think will be looking to try and get the leader's jersey. Bradley Wiggins, the Olympic Games individual pursuit champion, was 7th, 5 seconds adrift, and making up the top 10 there, a former Prologue winner of the Giro d'Italia, Rick Verbruggen of Cofidis, 7 seconds adrift. Well, I didn't expect to be calling this, but I'm very happy to be calling this, because the winner of the opening day's Prologue time trial here at Paris-Nice in Issy-les-Moulineaux, 4.8 kilometers, Bobby Julich.
A lot of men tried, and all of them failed to pass the early time set by Andrei Kashechkin, but that man was able to do it. Bobby Julich, the last man out on course, the last man to start, and took an incredible amount of risk. I think that the water on the course from the rain a little bit earlier in the day after the early starters affected a guy like Bradley Wiggins or Bradley McGee, but not this man, Bobby Julich, doing everything he could do. Good power on the hill, great technique, and he comes up with the goods. A wonderful Prologue win for the American. What a way to start his European campaign.
Well, he's come fresh off a very good 3rd place at the Tour of California. I think that race set itself up as a very good preparation for Bobby Julich, and of course for the whole CSC team, because Bob, let's not forget, Team CSC are actually looking at winning Paris-Nice for the 3rd year in succession. It was Bobby Julich last year. Jens Voigt was 4th overall. They've got a great squad, and of course they've got a lot of Americans on board, but these are the images of Bobby Julich just stopping the clock 0.7 of a second faster than Andrei Koshekin. What a magnificent performance by the American. So as Bobby Julich is surrounded by members of the press, let's just hear what he has to say about his win.
I can't describe the feeling because I just got back in France on Thursday, and I tried to do everything perfect with getting over the jet lag. But as soon as I got on the turbo trainer and started warming up, I was like, whoa, I have some good legs today. And in the prologue, honestly, I couldn't quite find my rhythm because I wanted to go faster, but it was too short for me. And then when I saw in the final straight, I came to the finish and I saw the time already at 6:02. I said, oh, I better go fast, and just barely made it, I think. Honestly, I did not train this winter. I did not focus on this race. I do the training at our training camps. I live the professional life of a cyclist, and but not until January. And then all of a sudden, the Tour of California was a huge surprise, and today was even bigger. I'm beginning to think that that this is just a dream, that these last few years, because I just keep getting better and better the older I get. I won last year. The pressure's not on me. I'm here for training, and it was basically I only came here because I had #1 on my back. If I didn't have #1 on my back, I would not even be racing right now. I did it to of course honor the number and honor being the last winner. But my goals are later in the year, and but in this sport you have to take it when it comes, because at my age of 34, you can't wait. You can't wait for it to come to you. Sometimes you have to go to it.
Well, that wraps up the prologue, but be sure to tune in again next Sunday. We'll have all of the highlights from the race throughout the week and full coverage of the concluding Stage 7. Find out who will be crowned as this year's winner of Paris-Nice. Cyclism Sundays, every Sunday at 5 p.m. Eastern, right here on OLN. For a complete schedule on the races we'll be covering here on OLN, log on to our website at www.olntv.com. Coming up next on OLN, live Arena Football League coverage. On behalf of Bob Roll, I'm Paul Sherwen saying, hope to see you next week.